Hi guys, today I'll be taking a look at an innovative switch design, the Gateron Cap Yellow V2. Let's get started. Now, this switch features a revised bottom housing and stem design. Gateron claims this is to make the switch more stable as well as to reduce resistance when the key switch is triggered. Additionally, there's a total of 7 variants of this switch, 3 linears, 3 tactiles and 1 clicky. Now, pricing wise, these are $23 for 35 switches on Gateron's website, placing these in the upper mid range. And this is what they look like when disassembled. Feel free to pause the video. Now, let's move on to the switch characteristics. On-center key presses are noticeably scratchy with slight differences from one switch to the next, especially at very slow key presses. Off-center key presses are substantially scratchier with noticeable binding at slow key presses. Overall, even though these are factory lube, they're still very scratchy and I wouldn't recommend them to anyone unless you're willing to put a lot of work into them. 4 out of 10. Now, according to Gateron, these switches have an actuation force of 50 grams at 2mm and a bottom out force of 60 grams at 4mm. The reset point is indicated to be on their force curve to be around 1.6mm. Now, as you can see from this force curve I recorded, the Gateron Cap Yellow V2 were within spec, apart from the reset point, which Gateron claimed to be at 1.6mm. However, I recorded the reset point to be at 2.14mm. This difference is greater than 0.5mm, which I automatically apply if a tolerance has not been given, which is the case here. Now, another thing I wanted to point out is the downward spike around 2.4mm. I repeated this test 3 times with the same switch and this showed up every time and I don't know what's causing it. Also, there's a slight bump in the upstroke near the top of the travel which go from 25 to 30 grams. I'm not exactly sure what's causing this, but it isn't noticeable when using the switch. Now, as a comparison, the Gateron Yellow is slightly lighter just before 2.4mm downstroke wise, although from that point onwards their weighting is quite similar, also their upstroke is very similar as well. Now, compared against the Gateron Black, it's very clear that the black switches are heavier overall, but it is interesting that they both have almost the same weighting until about 0.8mm. Overall, it's a medium weighted switch with minor inconsistencies, although I do still like the weighting, but it would be nice if the issues were sorted out in the next version. 7 out of 10. Now, these are super quiet for a non-silenced switch. They're also on the thocky side of things, but if you listen closely you can hear some scratchiness. Overall, they aren't anything remarkable. 5 out of 10. Now, take a listen and enjoy. Now, the very first thing I noticed when typing on them was their scratchiness. I wouldn't call it bad, but it doesn't feel great, especially when typing slowly, since that's when I could feel it at the most. However, despite the scratchiness, I enjoy typing on these. The weighting is close to my preference and its consistency, while not amazing, was tolerable. Overall, it is a scratchy switch, but its general performance was fine. I just wish it was less scratchy and more consistent. 7 out of 10. Now, its scratchiness was barely a factor and its inconsistencies were not existent when it came to playing fast-paced games. However, things would turn around for the worse when it came to playing slower-paced games. Off-center key presses felt very scratchy and was instantly noticeable, plus I noticed heavy binding in certain cases which felt absolutely horrible. Overall, I just wouldn't recommend this to anyone even if you only play fast-paced games. They're just too scratchy and far too inconsistent, but I have seen worse. 5 out of 10. In conclusion, this switch proves just because it's new and improved doesn't mean it's actually going to be any good in the real world. Maybe they'll figure it out in the next version. The final score for this switch is 28 out of 50 or 56%, which isn't great, but it's not terrible either. And that's it for today. Next time I'll be taking a look at another Gateron switch. Anyway, until then, take care and goodbye.